Over the last 5 years, I have unfortunately started and scaled multiple different agency models to 50K per month and beyond. And the reason why I say unfortunately will become clear very soon to you, but it has allowed me to gain a perspective that I think will help you a lot. And that is how to get unstuck and actually scale your agency beyond the 10 to 25K a month mark to 50K a month and beyond. And that's coming from someone who's done that multiple times. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Why did I say unfortunately? Well, it's unfortunate because I don't find that impressive. Anyone who says, oh, they've started multiple agencies that scaled it to a certain point, the first thing I immediately think of is why did you start an agency, get it to 50K a month beyond, and then start another one? Why don't you just keep scaling the current one that you're in? And I can't be a hypocrite. I have to be honest. Like I don't look at that with any pride or say that with any pride whatsoever. It was because of a really valuable lesson that took me a long time to learn, and that's the first lesson I want to start with to share with you guys, and that is do not jump ship. Do not chase a shiny object, and do not for 1 second blame your niche, your industry, or your product or service. What you're currently doing can absolutely scale. The niche that you're currently in can absolutely scale. And if it can't scale to the massive goal that you have, it can at least double or triple from here on out. And if it just doubles or triples, I want you to ask yourself, would you be happy? Right? If that happened in the next 12 months, if you just doubled or tripled where you're currently at, if you're at 10 to 25K a month and you got to 30 to 75K a month in just the next 12 months, would you be happy with that? Well, that's amazing growth, and you should be happy with that because you can get to that point, and then from a position of abundance, you can then make a decision to start another business when you're cashed up, when you've got cash flow. But if you're still at that 10 to 25K month, 10 to 25K a month mark, you still don't really have a business that's self-sufficient, and so you should probably look to actually scale it beyond this point. And by the way, you've done the hard part. The hard part, honestly, is starting and just getting above that 10K a month mark. That's the hardest part for most agency owners because especially if you've got two, $3,000 a month retainers, if you're at 10K and you lose 10 clients, two clients, you're back down to six, and then you gain one, and it's so hard to break through. So if you're consistently at 10 to 25K a month, or more, and you're hovering between that range, you've gotten over that initial real tough hump that people struggle to break through. So you should be grateful, and you should absolutely be trying to grow beyond this point, and that's actually because you absolutely can. So that's the first thing. I would have much preferred saying to you guys, I got a business to 1 million a month in the last 5 years than saying I scaled multiple agency models to 50K a month. You know, I've taken a web design agency, we did over 50K a month, lead generation business, well above 50K a month, e-commerce business, well above 50K a month. The agency I'm currently in, the model that I'm currently in, above that as well. So I've had the experience of doing it, but this time I don't plan on going back and starting something new. I'm just going to completely focus on what I'm currently doing, and so learn this lesson from me and learn it now. Don't make the same mistake. That's the first thing. Second thing is on the topic of focus. There has not been an easier way by far than growing past that 10 to 25K a month ceiling than to just focus on one thing, one product, one customer, and one acquisition channel. That is by far, the best advice I can give you to growing beyond that point. You should have one customer that you are looking to assist, and that's niching down, choosing a particular niche. Next, one solution. So one way of solving their problems, not Facebook and Google ads, just Facebook ads, right? Or it could be appointment setting, or it could be database reactivation, or it could be you just build websites for law firms, for example. It has to just be one service that you offer for one niche, and you use only one acquisition channel. If you're at that 10 to 25K a month mark, you do not want to be running Facebook ads and also doing cold outreach and also trying to post on social media every day. Just focus on one channel because at this point, you need to give that one channel all your attention in order for that channel to actually work. I think a lot of people at this rate under appreciate, or no, that's not the right word. You underestimate, sorry, just how difficult it is to take one channel of customer acquisition, of client acquisition, and scale it. It's really difficult. Making cold calling work is extremely hard to do. It takes a long time. And so if you try to do that partially as you're trying to make your Facebook ads work while you're also posting to build your organic channel, while you're at that 10 to 25K a month mark, you're stretching yourself too thin and you're not giving one channel enough time and attention to actually break through and do what it is that you want to do. Do not think that more is better here. Choose one channel, just one channel. It's either going to be Facebook ads, it's either going to be YouTube organic, or it's going to be posting on social media, or it's going to be cold DMs, or it's going to be cold outreach, or it's going to be cold emails, or it's going to be cold LinkedIn, right? It should just be one. And if you're wondering what should be the one thing that I choose, it would even be better for you to just choose, not worry about what the best acquisition channel is, just choose the one that you've made the most progress on so far, because it's very likely that you're just a couple iterations away from really breaking through. So if you've already been acquiring clients through cold calling, if you went all in on focusing on that for the next 6 to 12 months, that's another thing as well. Really, on YouTube, everyone makes it seem like you can fix client acquisition overnight and it's like an easy thing and the faster the better. But in reality, it takes a long time, a long, 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 long time to actually dial in client acquisition and get it profitable and get it consistent and then get it working at scale. It takes a long, long time to do that. So don't beat yourself up if it takes a while. When you do dial in client acquisition, it'll be worth it because that's when you can scale relatively quickly. So anyways, kind of circling back, you want to focus on one channel only. So now if we go back to this, to the start, so far we've said, don't have shiny object syndrome, stop blaming your niche, your industry, what you're offering, have only one product, one service, and one client acquisition channel. Keep everything simple. Now, when you do that, and you focus on one client acquisition channel, you're going to get really good at it and you're going to optimize it. And guess what's going to happen? It's going to start to work. And then it will start to generate you clients, whether again it's on ads or cold outreach or whatever. You'll dial it in, you'll start doing it better than your competition because all you're doing is focusing on this one channel, and then you'll start getting customers. It's just what happens. Okay, so have some patience and push through. And then when you offer one service, it also makes you create what we call a positive flywheel effect, where with every customer that you take on and that you provide the service for, with every mistake you make, with every client churned, with every point of criticism, with every point of feedback, you can make an adjustment that then benefits your current clients and future clients. Right. So, for example, I remember way back in the day, I lost a client and it was a very emotional loss because to sign this client on, I had promised him the world, promised him we'd refund his retainer, also promised him that I would cover all of his spend if we didn't hit a specific target. And I think it was a certain number of appointments. But when I was doing this, it was just simple lead generation and he had to call all of his leads himself. And I learned a lesson at that point, which is don't attach guarantees. I mean, you can actually with certain conditions, but for the most part, try to keep as much control over producing the result as possible rather than relying on anyone else. So kind of circling back, we ran his ads and he wasn't calling leads properly. He was complaining about lead quality, wasn't really giving it his all. It's like he wanted this to not work. And we fell short of the quota. He still closed deals and made money. And he said, you got to honor your guarantee. And I refunded him his retainer. And I refunded him, not refunded him. He told me I spent this much on Facebook ads to do this. And I literally had to transfer him the money out of pocket. It was a really tough client loss. But by losing that client, I made the decision that what I needed to do was actually start calling our customers leads. It was really necessary for the niche that I was in specifically. Now, funny enough, you may look at this and go, oh, Leo's niche needed Leo started calling his own niches leads. Maybe I should do the same. It's not true. That's the whole point of niching down. You need to really ask, does your niche need this, right? Because there are some industries out there that are set up to call their own leads. They've got admin staff, they've got in-house team, they probably already have this sorted, or the business owner has all the time in the world to just call leads and speak to leads, right? That may not make sense for you, right? So don't just take what I say and run with it, right? There isn't a one size fits all. For my particular niche and industry, it became very clear from this client and other client complaints that if I called leads, in addition to generating leads, that they would have a much better experience and generate better results. So then I decided to hire a sales rep, and then that sales rep started calling leads and booking appointments on behalf of clients. And then that sales rep started calling for all of our clients. And all of our clients started getting better results. And they all started generating better results, but also a lot more customer satisfaction. I was getting less and less, significantly less lead quality complaints. Now, that is an example of a positive flywheel effect, right? One niche, one industry, offering one service where the customer, where I could hire a sales rep who was selling, in our case was renovations, right? Just renovations, that's all. So now imagine if I had a renovation client and I also had a concreter and I also had, an accountant, and then I had a lawyer, and then I had solar, and I had to get one sales rep and tell the sales rep they had to call for all these different niches. How could that sales rep get good at all? At all? Selling all these different niches, different products, different services. You could probably pull that off and you'd become a bit of a call center. But when we're talking about actually understanding your client's product, you only want to be selling one thing. So in our situation, we were only working with renovation companies. And so that sales rep, once he learned how to sell for one renovator, he was immediately able to sell for all of our renovators. And he became really good because all he did all day, every day was just sell renovations. And then our SOPs and our processes and our training, we were able to build it just for selling one thing. So immediately by creating an adjustment and improving the product to impact one customer, it impacted or current customers and future customers. And that's what I mean by the positive flywheel effect, right? You create this positive flywheel with every new customer, you make an iteration that improves it for the next person. You create an amazing network effect. When you're running multiple different niches and different services, that doesn't happen. So it's like you hire a sales rep to call for renovations, but then he does well for that service, but then it doesn't work for this niche, and this strategy over here works well for this industry but doesn't work for this niche, and there is no positive flywheel that's taken place. So we want to create that positive flywheel effect. Now, the next thing that you need to know at the 10 to 25K a month mark is you need to know your numbers. This is a point at which most people are so emotional. Losing a client's emotional, gaining a client's emotional, looking at your performance of your ads and the performance of it's all emotional. You run some ads, you spend some money, you don't get a client, you're like, oh my God, they're debiting my account, and you just turn your ads off. Or you make a couple cold calls, you have a bad run, and then you stop calling. You post a couple times on social media. It's just so emotional. You're just constantly caught up in emotion. This is where you need to understand your numbers and make everything objective. You need to look at everything objectively speaking. And the main stuff that you need to know is, like, very simply, you have to have an idea in your head of what you want your cost of acquisition to be. And the best way to derive that is to take a look and estimate your lifetime gross profit. So if I have a client, they pay me $15,000 over their course of being with me, and I make 10,000 in profit, then my lifetime gross profit's 10 grand. Let's say that's what it is for you, right? Perfect. Awesome. Great. So your lifetime gross profit's 10 grand. Now, what should you be willing to spend to acquire that customer? Like, what would you be willing to pay to buy that customer? I think a 3-to-1 ratio is the consensus, especially in our industry. And I think it's, a pretty good target. So you should be willing to spend at least 3 grand. If your lifetime gross profit is 5 grand, then you should be willing to spend around, say, 1,500 to 1,600. But you need to have a number that you're willing to spend to buy a customer. If you don't have this number and you're not thinking this way, you will never, ever break through and start scaling, because scaling requires you spending money to acquire customers. It's so crucial. It's so necessary. This is where you're caught up with referrals, trying to spend as less as possible. You're paying attention to your profit and loss. A lot of like the money that you're making, the 10 grand is like your personal income. And you're like, oh, I don't want to spend 2 grand out of this, but you can't think that way. You've got to become objective. You have to be very clear on what your CPA is, your cost per acquisition. You go, okay, $2,000, that's the number. And then you need to reverse engineer your numbers to get to that 2 grand. So 2 grand, perfect. So if I close 1 out of 3 people, then I'm going to make this so hard for myself. But let's say it was 3 grand and I close 1 out of 3 people. That means I should be willing to spend $1,000 for an attended appointment, right? For a attended call. So if someone qualified shows up in the call and I've spent 1,000 on this person, 1,000 on this person, 1,000 on this person, I close 1 out of 3. That means every 3 people I see, I'm gonna close, and I would have spent 3 grand. Perfect. So you can actually afford to spend $1,000 per call. How cool is that, right? So now, if you're running Facebook ads, you can actually justify spending $1,000 just to jump on a call with someone, whereas that would probably sound crazy to you. But if you're closing 1 out of 3 and you can afford a $3,000 acquisition, then you should be willing to spend $1,000 per appointment. That's where the breakthrough happens, right? When you go, ah, I didn't realize that. Now, if you have a sales team, for example, an appointments that are operating on a commission basis, you should go to him, look, do whatever you got to do, put me in front of someone who's qualified. And if they show up, I'll pay you $1,000 per appointment. And you should be willing to pay them that, right? Because 1 out of 3 people you'll close. Once you become aware of your numbers, you become you're not very emotional. You're just willing to pay whatever and to acquire customers. So then you go, okay, cool. So $1,000 appointments, and then you reverse engineer that and go, okay, with a uh, 80% show rate, I've got to, spend $800 to get a booked call. And then you can reverse engineer that all the way to the amount of leads that you need to generate and the cost per lead, right? You can run your numbers. I'll probably do a separate video running through this. I think I already have a video on this, but you essentially want to start with that acquisition number, and you want to reverse engineer, and then you want to take the one acquisition system that you've built, and you just want to create a step-by-step system on all the things that need to take place for you to end at that acquisition cost and get to work, whether it's calling the amount of people you need to call, sending the amount of DMs you need to send, sending the amount of emails you need to send, or spending the money that you need to spend. You just literally need to get to work. And then you need to spend the next 6, 12, 18 months, however long it takes, fine tuning it until you get it to a point where it is actually optimized and profitable. And then you work to actually start to scale it. And that is a whole nother ball game as well, actually scaling it. So now, I'm not going to summarize because I think I've probably lost my trail of thought a little bit. But we've gotten to a point where we have now figured out client acquisition. Once you've figured out client acquisition, what you've essentially done is created a way to fill your bucket up at a faster pace than at which it is leaking. And when you can do that, you can then scale past 10 to 25K a month. That is why client acquisition is necessary. It's why it's the first thing that I spoke about. Because the reason why you're stuck at 10 to 25K, 10 to 25K is very likely because you're at a point at the moment where you're signing on customers, but you're also losing customers. You're signing on customers and then you're losing customers. You sign on 2, you lose 2. You sign on 3, you lose 3. And so you're stagnating. So what you need to do is you need to first and foremost find a way to acquire more customers than what you're currently losing. And if you can do that, then you're going to guarantee growth. If you can acquire 5 customers a month and you're only currently losing 2, then you are going to, without a doubt, force growth. You are going to grow, and you will break through your current ceiling. Now, do we just want to focus on that? No. Well, because we don't want to be a churn and burn business, right? We actually want to retain clients. And if it's not to build an amazing product and service, and that's personally what I'm driven by, I want to build the best product and service that changes the lives of our customers. And man, have we made such enormous progress over the last year and a half. But if you're not driven by just genuine impact and you're like, oh man, I just want to run an agency that does X amount in revenue and profit, then you should be driven to build a product and service that produces results, because that is the best way to reduce churn. And churn is what's going to make your life a living hell as an agency owner or even as a coaching business owner. It's churn. Churn is the worst, the baddest word, right? But it's the only thing that's guaranteed. Churning clients, losing clients is guaranteed no matter how good you are. The only thing that could fluctuate is the percentage of what your churn is. The very big difference between having a 50% churn and a 20% churn and a 10% churn. And then there's a very big difference between 10 and 5%. They're massive, right? The ceiling of growth for a business at 5% churn is massive, significantly larger than that at 10%. So churn actually becomes a big focus point as you scale. So we want to reduce churn. We want to make sure we're bringing clients in, but all right, we're filling the tap. The tap's on. It's where we've got a big a flow of customers coming in, but we also need to make sure that we're reducing the leak, right? Because at scale, the leak becomes bigger and bigger. Things begin to break more. So you need as you're building your client acquisition systems, you also should be putting a significant amount of your time and energy into genuinely wanting to build a product that solves the end result that your customer wants. Now, this here is the biggest shift in mentality you can make as an agency owner, because you got into the agency game, you got to 10K a month, you're at 10 to 25K, and you very likely started an agency to get to this point. Like, you didn't start an agency being like, I want to build the best product and service that changes my life for my customers. You're just like, I just want to replace my full-time job and make 15 grand a month. That's the reason you started your agency. If you want to get beyond this point, you now need to take your energy and focus away from you, and you got to focus on your customers. That's the only way really to get to that next level. And so what does that mean? What does that actually mean? And what does that actually look like? Well, what that means and what that looks like is you need to sit down and you need to ask yourself, instead of me thinking about all these different ways that I can minimize churn, what can I produce as a result for my clients so that they'd be crazy to leave me? What could I do for them? What kind of result could I produce so that they would just have no reason to leave? Right? Now, if you run a performance-based agency where the end result of why clients pay you is to make more money than what they gave you, then a hypothetical scenario would be, let's say they paid you 3,000 a month, but you were making them 30,000 a month. And then by canceling your 3 grand a month, they would lose 30 grand a month. They'd be crazy to do that. Absolutely out of their minds to do that, right? So instead of thinking about all these fancy different ways that we can reduce churn, don't focus on that yet. Although there are many ways you can reduce churn by, setting expectation prior to onboarding, good communication, open communication, meetings, et cetera, right? Don't focus on that just yet. All you need to focus on is, well, what's that one result that I could do, that one thing that I could do that I know would just make them feel silly to cancel my services? And that by far is to increase the discrepancy, the difference between what they pay you and what you give, what they pay you and then what you give them in return. Okay. And then get to work building that product and service. I can't tell you how to get that done, but all I can tell you is if you just have a focus of producing, of genuinely sitting there and figuring out how to tweak your product and service to actually help your customers produce the end result they've come to you for, then you will eventually reduce churn to a point where now you've got customers coming in and your churn is reduced, and then you've got a surplus of clients and you would just break through and scale far beyond that 25K a month mark. That's the recipe that you essentially need to make this happen. You have to be absolutely obsessed with actually producing that end result for clients. Then once you get to that 50K month mark and beyond, then you start looking at other ways to reduce churn, and you may even potentially start considering other ways to acquire clients. But we'll leave that discussion for another time. So hopefully this has helped you guys. I know it's been a bit of a sit down and me just kind of talking. I felt a bit inspired to do this video so I could help you guys out. If you have any specific questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. If you want to ask me a question and you don't want to comment it, just find me on Instagram at Leo Hullaby and DM me there. I'd be more than happy to help you. See you guys in the next one.